And then in that same course, the hand therapy course, obviously we had splinting is a huge component. We chose to go the route. I know with Medicare now, they want to call splinting orthotic fabrication, but the purpose of calling it splinting was that's a more uniform terminology across the world that's widely known. And Medicare is generally only dictating to call splinting orthotic fabrication. So that's why we went with the splinting route instead of orthotic fabrication. I know there's going to be a few questions about that, but that's to reach the more worldwide population that knows that terminology. And everybody in the United States still knows that terminology as well. But what this was just rolled out, 2-3 weeks ago, Mike?
Yep.
Yeah. So we definitely want to add content to it, but I think our goal is to get the splinting app out there and have a good wide knowledge of the most basic things that you'll see in a hand therapy clinic. I find that my goal with this was to not only just show the techniques, but also get that base knowledge of what it is you're truly doing. And that's where you see this in the splinting principles. It talks about station preparation, care of equipment, how to cut and smooth edges, and actually has videos on doing that and the purpose of that. Our goal is also to add some biomechanics within it as well to really get a foundational knowledge of what you're actually doing, not just putting it into hands-on, but also understanding when you're doing that hands-on. We have pattern drawing, and I've always been told as a student, when I would have students, my fieldwork students, when I was back in practice, was, well, we can look at these pictures out of a textbook, but actually putting them together is such a different concept, right? So it's being able to kind of take words and put it into hands-on practice, which is very difficult oftentimes. And that's where these videos have been very helpful. My wife is actually an OT as well, and she's not a hands person. And she sees these videos and she just wishes that she had that availability when she was a student. So let's go through. So we have the principles, and then we go through materials and looking at what the actual material properties are. That oftentimes can be a very difficult concept for students to understand. We can tell them, okay, there's plastic materials and they have these properties, and rubber materials, they have these properties. But until they actually see it or play around with the material, they're not going to truly understand what these materials do and why we use different materials. So if you actually go into the materials, we have a video, high-speed video, talks about the properties, gives you some brand name examples, and some common uses for splinting here. So not recommended for novice therapists. So if they read that, they understand, well, if I'm new to practice, maybe this is not a good material to order for my clinical site. And then we can break it down. We broke it down into body regions and conditions for the actual videos of the splinting fabrication. So if you look here, we have thumb, finger, hand, wrist and forearm, and elbow. So I'll just give you an example here. We have thumb. We can go into wrist and hand. And we have the video and the high-speed video. Let me go back here. Let's go into wrist cock-up. We chose to go with the commonly used terminology that you'll hear in a clinical practice, like wrist cock-up, instead of wrist immobilization or static wrist splint, because we wanted to go with something that was, again, more widely used terminology. But if you go into the actual splint here, you can see that we have alternate names in here. Because right now, depending on where you are in the country, you might have various names for various splints. So we tried to incorporate that as well. And then you have your video.
The wrist cock-up orthosis.
Or you have your high... high-speed video, which some students might have watched it already, but they want to get that refresher. And that's why we did the high-speed video for students that may have already prepared, but they just need that reminder. You'll also see the template here, and we also have a patient education handout that can be emailed to a patient as well. So it's not just based on students, it's also based for practitioners as well. Our goal is to bring this not only to students, but also something that they can bring into their practice and use when they're entry-level practitioners. Let's see here. Okay. And if you look, there's written instructions for people who want written instructions, but there's also the videos for people who are more visual learners. So I think the idea is to kind of hit all those different types of learners. There are visual learners, are auditory learners, and be able to kind of bring that across all forms of learning styles. So we wanted to kind of end off on what as faculty do you wish we would develop, or what are things that you would like to add to kind of enhance your student engagement and learning?
So it just